Hey there, I'm Sara Porritt, and you are tuning in to the Hear Us Roar podcast. Join me for inspired conversations with Asian women chatting about how ideas and passions can ignite truly transformative journeys. On today's episode, we'll learn about how April Tam Smith struck that delicate balance between humility and ambition to create a lifestyle and a business that takes giving back to a whole new level.
There is never going to be a perfect moment to start a business, just like most people say about kids and family. And I don't know if you ever foresee everything that will go wrong, you know? And being reminded of why you decided to start it to begin with was what really kept me going.
Restaurants in New York City are frankly a dime a dozen. And in fact, 80% of restaurants here close in the first 5 years. So how was PS Kitchen, a restaurant that gave away 100% of its profits while providing employment to marginalized employees, able to develop such a successful and sustainable business model? Not only has April's restaurant been able to pull off just that, she's taken those profits and done some incredible social justice work that has made some measurable impact in the lives of those in need. Let's have a little chat with April. You were born in Hong Kong.
I was, and then I moved here when I was 11. You know, I loved it. I loved school. I loved my classmates. And we lived pretty simply. My dad worked for the government, and then my mom, on and off, always worked in a clothing factory. And yeah, we just always, I felt like we had more than enough. And even early on, I think, because maybe my dad worked as a social worker in Hong Kong, where he would help with like giving people welfare and also seeing how much my mom had to work even very early on when she was, 11 and 12. Working as a preteen or a teenager, she, as you can imagine, had to send back a lot of money back home to China. And that's why she started working so early, was to support her family. She and her mom was the only two that came to Hong Kong. She also kind of indulged me with my desire of wanting to help those that are vulnerable. And, I remember going to China with them, going either to visit some family or going to the cemetery for grandparents. Like, you see some of the kids on the street and that's pretty hard. And they would always let me give them money. And even when I was like quite young, there was a little cat in the neighborhood. And she let me take it home. And then there was a second one later on when I was a little bit older that we couldn't take home, but she would go with me to the park every single day to feed her. So that's probably a waste of time to a lot of other parents, but she just always kind of allowed me to, want to help those that are less fortunate or the vulnerable, like the little kids.
Yeah. It sounds like it's like the little things that your parents choose to do too. Like my mom is also very selfless and thoughtful little things. Even when my friends come over, if it's late, she'll turn on the light in the main house or make sure that they have snacks and things like that. And then in Chinese culture, my parents always taught me how to 做人.
I do really appreciate the part about our culture where it's like, you have such a strong intention of expecting the other person's needs. And I think that's kind of what you refer to as like Joran.
Right.
That you want to see how you can best serve the other person. As simple as like, the moment they come in, it's like, can I get you something? Here's all the food that we have. Here's like the slippers you can wear in my house.
That sounds really familiar. I wonder why.
Yes, it's pretty funny. I mean, even to this stage, it's just so funny. Now I've been working for like a bajillion years. Yeah. I've like not lived at home for so long, and my parents are definitely still, as you can probably relate, like, are you hungry? Have you eaten?
Very much so.
Are you sleeping?
Every time.
Do you need to go to the bathroom?
My parents still ask me if I look both ways when I cross the street.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes.
If you're ever in Midtown Manhattan and have a desire to stop by a place that feeds your body and your soul, PS Kitchen is definitely the spot to check out. Not only has April developed a super yummy plant-based menu, she's created a bit of an oasis in a chaotic urban center. You're going to fall in love with it once you hear the backstory of what inspired her to open up a restaurant rooted in radical giving.
The last, almost 10 years now, I've kind of lived this double life of, by day, as you know, I work on the trading floor in equity derivatives, but by night, I've always just wanted to not just give back, but live in that world of justice and service and really seeing both my day job and my night job just as important. So 9 years ago, I went on my first trip to South Africa and served in an orphanage for HIV-positive children. And really, really impacted me. Went back the next year. I just really got to experience the joy of giving. What can I possibly buy that would give me the same amount of joy as everything that I just got to share with these kids, or actually buy for their classmates in school, because they were so selfless. These girls was asking me for things that I could help with their classmates and their classmates' family. Anyway, long story short, after 2 trips to South Africa, got a chance to go to Haiti. And I really wanted to be thoughtful and cautious about the way that I serve, and not just making it into like this is so cool, let me go once a year and try to feel good about myself, or whatever that might look like. So I really wanted to commit to a community and really make this part of my life. So going to Haiti and going back, the last 14, 15 times over the last 4 or 5 years, and being a regular part of their lives, and also giving in ways that might be stretching my comfort zone, both financially and time-wise and emotionally, etc. And after one of my many trips, I came back, wrote another email like I usually do, help me fundraise for a well, fundraise for school, help me build this and that. And one of my good friends, who is now my business partner, along with his wife, said, kind of jokingly probably, why don't we just start a small business that gave away 100% of its profit so it could sustainably fund all these things that you're passionate about?
And were you like, wow, that sounds great? Or were you like, wow, that's impossible?
No, so that's our joke, is that he's the dreamer and I'm the doer. Because I think he kind of just said it. He kind of just said it, and then I was immediately like, oh, are you serious? Let's do this. And next thing you knew, I booked commercial real estate brokers, appointments.
You just get shit done, huh? You just make it happen.
Really funny. He recently joked, which is totally not true, but we were meeting a group from Congo and just helping them build schools there, etc. And the founders were asking us how this started, and I told them the story, and they were like, wow, so you are the actual idea person. It actually came from you. And my partner jokingly said yeah, that was kind of the extent to I contributed. And then she just ran for it. And I love that. We have such a great partnership. I'm so, so grateful for him and his wife. And there's no way. I just still don't know to this day. A lot of businesses fall apart. A lot of founders have issues and things like that. But I think because we're all in this not for ourselves, and we're in this just to give something to society, even though we've had all the normal difficulties, if not more, as any startups, because we give away all the profit, because we have this other mission, this crazy thing that we decided to do has actually brought us closer. So long story short, he kind of threw that out there. And because my husband Graham and I, at that point, we had just been newly married, so probably crazy timing as well. We have already thought that we would live in a way that is more, I guess, radically generous. So we cap our own income and the rest is for giving. And we always see if we were blessed with more, that it could be seen as a way to increase our standard of giving as opposed to standard of living. So having an idea like that actually made a lot of sense for us. So instead of writing a big check every year to different organizations, what if we wrote a big check and try to start something, and the next 15 years, that's the lease that I have in this location. So the next 15 years, we would have something hopefully sustainable to fund all the organizations that we're passionate about, and the founders and the local staff can really focus on what they're really good at, which is serving the population they deeply care for. So we want to create a platform that it's like, you're gonna eat anyway, you're gonna throw a party anyway. What if there is a place that is so convenient, you can come and do what you already normally do, but actually it's going to places that are making big difference by giving away our profit. And also, P.S., as you probably know, we hire those that have a challenging background, those that are marginalized in New York City, so that we could really give people a hand up as opposed to hand out, like we like to say in PS.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's challenges in working with people that are marginalized?
So I recently went to a generosity training to facilitate retreats. And one thing that we were reading about is the idea that passion came from the root pati in Latin, which means suffer for. And I really think in order to be truly generous and passionate, it's something that you're willing to suffer for. And even though, for sure, when you are making an effort to maybe try to hire people who have no experience, one of the reasons why we chose a hospitality business as opposed to other business to give all our profits away is that it should be hopefully a business where you can have a few spots that are open for people who have no experience. So it costs you something, money and time and energy, to train them. But that is literally the mission and something I'm passionate about. And that is what we're willing to, quote unquote, lose, and what we're willing to, quote unquote, suffer for. Right?
I feel like you're painting such a blue sky scenario in terms of like, oh, if I were to create this ideal structure where I can hire marginalized people, give away 100% of my profits. Was there an element of fear? Did you run into any challenges? At any point were you like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Oh my word. How much time do you have?
Plenty of time.
I mean, I referred to earlier, it was one of the scariest things I've ever done. I signed this 15-year lease with a personal guarantee at the age of 30. And as you and I have talked a little bit about our background, it's not like we came from like really wealthy families. We were both immigrants. So I have been really fortunate with my work, but it's definitely at the age of 30, it was definitely a very scary step to take. And interestingly, between like me and my husband and my business partner and his wife, I'm the oldest. So it was a bunch of kids that just took this leap of faith and be like, let's see what happens. So signing something for like half my life was definitely the scariest thing I've ever done. But, again, it comes back to the idea of, I think when you're serving and when you're being generous, it's going to hurt. And if it doesn't hurt you, maybe that means there's more room for more generosity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's meant to inconvenience you. It's meant to challenge you. Actually, it was really difficult. Like, it's definitely been a very humbling experience. We were given a certain amount of time that it would take to finish, a certain amount of budget. And both of them end up being 4 times that in terms of time and money. And there were, of course, moments in that 2.5 years period that I was building this out where I thought, like, am I supposed to just kind of give up? Am I being unwise? Should I just surrender the 6 months deposit I put into this place and the money that we have already put in to try to renovate it, et cetera, et cetera? I'm grateful that I can't believe it's actually open. Now it's been a year and a half and I'm still like, wow, we have a restaurant. And it is actually impacting lives. And we've created jobs for over 40 something people that are in that particular category that we're trying to serve. It still feels pretty unreal.
Instead of focusing on maximizing profitability, like most business owners, April is focused on maximizing the return on investment with regards to impact. For those of us who want to give back but maybe aren't quite ready to take such a giant leap, I asked April about taking steps towards leading a more generous lifestyle.
And I think we can all do that. You don't need to have a business to live in this way, but just being more thoughtful about where you spend your money. And we are all blessed with our own time, money, energy, resources, consumer decisions. So how do we max out our impact with each and every single one of those decisions?
So I know you and your husband are very thoughtful in how you do that.
Can
you give us a little bit of insight into like personally how you would tackle something like that if you wanted to give back?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. When I was single, you know, a lot of my coworkers very sweetly, because they've seen me grow up on the trading floor, ask like, what are you looking for? You must be so picky. Like, what do you want? What's like the perfect like type? And when I met my husband, at that time he was working at Credit Suisse, but he had just come home from Uganda for like living there for 2 months. And I had been going to Haiti a lot already. But not only did he live in Uganda, when he came back, he decided to spend the same amount of rent as he did in Uganda as he would in New York City.
Which is how much?
I think it was like, I don't know, like $400. So he split a 2-bedroom, and there were 5 of them. He lived in a bunk bed and shared a room with like 2 other guys. And he was trying to live in this way where he was spending like 10% of his income or something and kind of giving the rest away. And it's funny because when I met him, and at that point I had a single mom from Haiti and her 2-year-old living with me in my room, and we were both working in finance. It was just like a funny way of wanting to maximize like the way that we can be generous, that made us both kind of like, wait, what? Who are you? And
match made in heaven, right?
So I think that makes it easy that we're very much on the same page in that. And yeah, for a while, people on my trading floor laugh like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's the bunk bed guy.
Yeah, because, I mean, having gone through online dating myself, if you hear that a guy lives in a bunk bed, to most women, they're going to be like, April, what are you thinking?
That's what he was worried about. He's like, oh man, I don't know if I'll ever meet anyone. Like once they know that's like how I've decided to live. And I don't really want to spend money on clothes. I don't really want to spend money on food. And not that you have to live in this way. And we're definitely not, quote unquote, living in that way anymore. Of course, this is like 5 years later. And but we still have a roommate, which is odd to a lot of people. And for a while, we had someone live with us for free. To kind of help him. And then now we have just, another friend of ours that we love doing life with. And then his rent goes directly to like an organization that we choose every single month. And that's just another way of kind of just sharing what we have and different fun ideas that you can really make it rewarding.
Yeah. Did you have any hesitation sharing some of your projects outside of your finance job? What were your hesitations and what kind of pushed you past it?
Oh man, I was so nervous. I remember the very first time after I came back from South Africa and wrote an email, and I had this whole email on my desktop, like on my screen, and I like was just too scared to send it. I felt shy. I felt like vulnerable. I felt like I don't want people to think that, oh, I'm telling them all the good things I'm doing, you know, like the idea of like not letting your right hand know what your left hand's doing. I just really was super hesitant. And I think I almost deleted it so many times.
I'm glad you did it.
And it was funny. Like, it was funny that one of my coworker, Pete, was like, Tamers, go to the bathroom. I'm just going to send it when you're off the desk. He's like, I couldn't take it anymore. Oh. And I don't even remember.
That's a good friend.
He is a good friend. I actually think he might have sent that very first one. I can't remember. This was like 8-9 years ago. But till this day, I still have had a lot of these moments. I mean, it's been so long, and you always still feel really vulnerable. And you don't want to be the one that asks for money. You don't want to feel like you're telling the world how great you're being. And of course, like, you know, our culture values humility so much. I think that's something that it's always going to be such a struggle of like being taught early on as an Asian woman, Asian Christian woman. For me, like humility and like not saying what you're doing is so important. And then at the same time, wanting to engage people and wanting to share so that you can really help the organizations on the ground, because most people, like the biggest gift you can give them, it's not necessarily just donation. It's like helping them spread the word so that naturally more people would want to jump in. And if people weren't willing to share about PS Kitchen, like we would not exist, you know?
Now that you've gone through kind of the whole journey of PS Kitchen, what kind of advice would you give your younger self if you had to just think of one really thoughtful thing that you could say to April 10 years ago?
Yeah. The willingness to leverage your network. I think networking, quote unquote, sounds terrible. And a lot of us like hear that word and be like, oh, I don't want to be a networker. Like, oh, what is like overly ambitious, etc. And just the idea of when you're being authentic and genuine and building the network to serve others is actually a gift and also almost an obligation. Like, if we can be a voice for those who don't necessarily have the same platform that we do, then we should use it. And I've just been completely humbled and surprised by the outpouring of love and generosity and support by my quote-unquote network that have become just like families around this crazy adventure, about this venture that I put myself through that we decided to start together, as I shared.
Yeah. What is the impact that you've created with the donations from PS Kitchen?
Yeah, so with PS Kitchen, it's been really fun. So we have, you know, we have created over 40 plus jobs already for those that are previously in difficult situations. We actually have built 2 schools. We've funded the building of 2 schools in Congo. One's going to be called PS Justice and one's called PS Grace. And we're in the process of doing a 3rd school, hopefully. And just different organizations that we really strongly believe in. If you go to our restaurant, actually, if you flip to the back of the menu, we highlight an organization called Share Hope that just does absolutely incredible work in Haiti, and I've seen it with my own eyes. We've created 1,700 jobs there, and all the profits go back to funding breast cancer, cervical cancer screening for the women, night classes for any worker that qualifies for the program, or sign language classes for the deaf workers, as well as like Restore NYC. We want to help the women get sustainable, meaningful work as well. So you can tell I have a passion specifically around the idea of giving someone dignity to provide for themselves. So it's a lot of like economic empowerment, jobs creation, education, so that you're really lifting them up to help themselves.
Yeah. What made you pick dignity as sort of like the underpinning?
That's a good question. I really believe that we all have our purpose and passion within us, and we're all just so created differently, and it's a matter of finding something that you feel on purpose when you give. You know, if you sometimes don't feel as excited about giving to certain thing or volunteering for certain things, or it feels more like I should do this as opposed to I really want to do this, maybe it's just off purpose at the moment. So finding what your creator has made you into. I was just talking to my husband about it this morning. Like, for me, some of the words that have kind of come to me over the last few years of processing these are like inspiring hope, affirming significance, igniting joy. And for him, it's something more like growing impact and, growing sustainability and generosity and scaling. So it just comes down to how you're created. And for me, seeing someone, this joy that they have when they know that they are adding value to society, when they matter, like letting someone know, hey, you are important. You're not just a receiver. You too have something to give. It's just like so encouraging for me. One of our staff at PS Kitchen, he was in and out of prison for 30 years. He was addicted to heroin early on in his life. And just like sadly, kind of a typical story of growing up not necessarily in the best neighborhood and not having a lot of role models and just not knowing where to turn to. And it was through another arrest where the judge said you either choose rehab or it's more time in prison. And when he became clean, he had already made all these decisions to drastically change his life. But the difference between being able to change his life completely versus that decision, it's finding meaningful work. Mm-hmm. And he looked for 4 years. Wow. And when we gave him a job simply as a dishwasher, he told us that later on as we got to know him, he went to the corner of 48th and 8th and he just started like crying and was like, I can't believe someone would give me a job, like me. And he often would say, like, it's the dignity and knowing that I add value and I can bring something to society. Mm-hmm. And I love that. That's just so priceless. And for the second generations, too, he loves sharing his story. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people ask, like, oh, how does your staff feel about, sharing their story? And then we never, ever, ever, like, if anybody wants to share, they're allowed to and they should. And he loves sharing his story because he wants the next generation who might be going through a similar path or can prevent them from going down that path. He wants them to see, like, no, you can choose something different and you can also add a lot of value to society.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Hear Us Roar podcast. Until next time.